You're listening to the All Things Geekery podcast. This is episode 4 of season 3, The Bad, the Good, and the Not So Ugly. I'm your host, Detached.
Hey guys, and I'm Victus.
Well, guys, we want to welcome all our listeners back to the show. And if it's your first time with us, well, we thank you for stopping in and joining us. We hope you guys enjoy this episode.
In this episode, we will talk about Activision Blizzard and the recent jobs layoffs that happened. We will also discuss some really exciting news that came from Nintendo regarding their most recent Nintendo Direct. I'm excited about that. We will delve into new movie announcements that has us excited. And finally, we'll wrap up the podcast by talking about our first impressions regarding Anthem. So to start off, like we mentioned, we're going to talk about something that set fire to the gaming verse in anger at a single point, which was basically the yearly statement that came from Activision Blizzard, in that, you know, they and the layoffs that happened, right? The big news was Activision Blizzard is going to lay off 800 employees. It was a little bit less than that, but, you know, rounding up. Wow, that got everybody angry.
Yeah, that all I can picture right now is the meme of the lady going, "And Lord Jesus, there was a fire."
Yes.
All I can see is that, because the level of hate that Activision and Blizzard has right now from the community is pretty overwhelming, but they have not done good as a company for a while. I think, you know, when companies, especially in the game development realm, get to the size that both of them have, they've made some huge mistakes, and really just they have not treated their people well over the last few years. This isn't something that's new in Activision's or Blizzard's realm. This has become pretty common in the game development world like this. So
yeah, and it's unfortunate because there was the takeover merger, however you want to look at it, of Blizzard into Activision to basically create another EA in how large they are, right?
Right.
And their acquisition and their holdings of IPs.
Yeah, it's stupid how big the company is. It really is.
Yeah, and before that point, Blizzard was really, besides their loyal fan base, they were really a respected company, right? And in the past year and a half, we've seen holes being poked in that respect for Blizzard, right? Because of decisions that make, whether if it was pushed from the CEOs that are over that joint union between the two or not. We saw some of that at, like we talked about in our BlizzCon, with how they are treating certain aspects of their fan base. We saw that there, and of course we've seen the same. We're seeing the same exact activity regarding all of Activision stuff. No change there. But it was how this most recent announcement happened. So it was, what was weird is that during the financial announcement, they said they had profits, which is good for a company, albeit not as good as previous years. But then they said that we're going to, I think they used the word restructure some areas of non-movement, non-productivity.
Yeah, that was the red tape answer.
Yeah, that was the political answer. That means, you know, in short, we're going to lay off people.
We're firing some people.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people, it's like people just out of the blue, right, are being given these meetings that, oh, sorry, you no longer work with us. And it's a huge, especially this 800, roughly about 800, which equal about 8% of their workforce. And it's huge to get rid of that many people. And you know, by itself, those things happen. You know, those things happen in a development of a business, of a company. The ebb and flow of workforce, depending on what you're working on. But
but there's a big but here.
but
When I say but, I'm not talking about the B-U-T kind of but. Talking about the B-U-T-T kind of but, and there was two of them.
yes, two people, Mr. Bobby Kotick and Dennis Durkin. One is the CEO of Activision Blizzard. One is the CFO. Were both given substantial bonuses and payouts about the same time.
It was a couple of $100, I think.
Couple hundred with a lot of extra zeros on there.
I think it had about 6 zeros at the end.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
$200 billion.
And so it's really hard to have sympathy for anybody in that upper management of that company when something like that happens. Like, wow. Just wow. And that's really why the firestorm happened. Right? Yeah. I bet you if the layoff had just happened by themselves, it would not have been as bad.
Well,
it's because it happens, right? The ebb and flow of the company. Everybody understands that it's going to happen. It is tragic to those people that are being affected by it, but it does happen.
Yes and no. I agree. It happens in business. It's just business, but the culture over the last few years has definitely shifted with the game development companies. And you have a separation in the companies where you truly have developers and people that have a love for art and creation and programming and design and graphics and pulling that together to make something that's entertaining. And then you have the big suits that ride on the upper level who may have never played a video game ever in their life, or they may be really passionate about it. But there is definitely a disconnect between a lot of these companies with their executive level and their game developers. With any big business, there is a disconnect with the uppers who are steering the ship and the people who are making the boat float. It's just the way business functions. But we're talking video games, and unfortunately, they drive a lot of business through executives and through that upper level like this. And unfortunately, it's the guys that are doing the work down below that are making the programming changes, that are making the graphics, that are making the marketing for these games that are getting cut. You don't see things like, hey, we laid off 8% of our executive staff yesterday because they all suck at what they do, and they took $22 million bonuses, and we only pay our developers $60,000 a year. You don't hear that kind of news because it's not a company that's run by the people who are making the products anymore. It's a company run by high expensive executives who have got their heads reared up too far up someone's rear end. And sorry, you got me on a soapbox now, but these companies are run so backwards. They are run on money and finances, and it's lost the luster and the push to have an entertainment. And we're talking entertainment. It's just like Hollywood. I mean, it's big budgets. It's, big salaries for certain people, but honestly, video games started with a passion for art. It really did. Programming. I mean, some of the very first video games that we ever saw were simple, but it was because of a passion for entertainment. And that's unfortunately turned into a big turn for lots and lots and lots of big money. And it's okay. Make money. I'm cool with making money. I like having money. Nothing wrong with that. But for a company to come in and say, hey, we're going to drop 8% of our staff, but yet we're going to pay our CFO and our CEO gazillions of dollars for this, nonsense. That's crooked. Plain old crooked. And I really don't think Activision and Blizzard are going to be around for a lot longer if they keep making decisions like this.
Well, and yeah, to your point, their outlook on the next couple years is not too good in regards to just IP announcements.
Yeah, I mean, bleak.
We know the new Diablo Mobile is going to do just fantastic.
Right?
Sorry.
It's going to have a couple of downloads.
Sorry, I can't.
Just the
I
fact
couldn't.
that we,
I couldn't continue with that.
just the fact that we have a Diablo mobile.
Yeah.
The word mobile does not belong on an RPG game. I'm sorry. It does not.
But it doesn't, it doesn't look good for the future of those two companies.
No.
And that was kind of the hindsight is always 2020. And if we really look back there were signs that something like this was going to happen in regards to the layoffs. Looking, the payout is what it is, and that was horrible and awful to happen.
Yeah.
At the same time. But if we look at just the layoffs, one thing they noted in here is we don't know that all 800 were developers of some type. It just know that they were under the payroll of Activision Blizzard. But there was a noted point in that previous to this, we had the very noticeable separation between Activision and Bungie. Bungie going a la solo now.
They separated? Really?
Yeah, I think they did that, and it was just cheers all around for Destiny fans.
Yeah, because Bungie finally got the freaking blood leeches pulled off of them. I'm sorry, Activision was tearing Bungie to crap.
Yes, yeah, because you can see the leadership in Bungie that had the heart to. They wanted to build a good game, and you saw it from everybody that you saw active on, Twitter from the Bungie side of the, side of the fence. They love this IP that they're making and want everybody to enjoy it. Now, if you listen to Activision's side of the story, they let Bungie go because Destiny didn't perform as they thought it should with Forsaken. So we're going to let it go. Yeah. Sure.
Right. It didn't perform well at all. Yet it was one of the best-selling games around.
Right. Yeah. It was one of the best rated of Destiny ever. The community loved it, and so there's that. But then with that is an understanding that there were several internal Activision companies that were helping Destiny kind of either do PR or help in some way with the development of the game. One of those being Visceral Studios, Visceral Entertainment, Vicarious Vision. My goodness,
Vicarious
Visions.
Yes.
Yeah, scrolling through the article here, was helping them, and whether they continue or not in the future, that's a different story. But you have this big company be pulled out, and then nobody's like, what do we do now, right? And I think several other IPs were kind of on back burner. They weren't having a whole lot going with them. You had the Skylanders for Activision. So, you could almost say that the layoffs were going to happen if you just look at the layoffs, right? There were some signs there to that. Whether that was the same people that were actually affected by it, I haven't actually gone and looked at the detailed portions of that were laid off.
Yeah, I haven't looked at any of that. But like you said, forewarning, it was a great split. I'm glad Bungie split. They have a chance to actually become the company that they used to be once again. I do think that they're going to struggle for a little bit. I think they lost some momentum, and Activision was steering the boats the direction that Activision wanted to go versus where Bungie wanted to go. And I honestly think why we got some of the gaming that we had over the last few years with Destiny is because Bungie wanted one thing, Activision wanted another, and
Activision paid the check.
Activision has a bigger bank account than Bungie does.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So parallel with that, I hope, and maybe this will never happen, I hope Blizzard does something similar.
I hope Blizzard breaks apart from Activision.
Yeah, I hope Blizzard breaks apart from Activision. It'll be a lot harder because of the amount of IPs and stakes that they would pull with them. Whether that actually happens, but I want to see the Blizzard that I started out playing with World of Warcraft 3, with And we saw some of that finally sneak through. We're seeing Warcraft 3 Reforged. We're seeing World of Warcraft Classic. Whether it's just a money grab or not, it's definitely a fan service because those are great, well-loved games. And going back to those individual community requested areas is great. But I hope there's been other decisions that made that you're like, Blizzard, this doesn't sound like you. It really doesn't. In some of the decisions, that Diablo Mobile being one of them, or how they did the Diablo, say, if they would have done something else in addition to that, it'd have been okay. But we covered that in previous podcast.
We did.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think Activision, it just needs to get swept under a rug and burnt.
All the Call of Duty fans are like, no, we love our Call of Duty.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on Call of Duty. It's a terrible video game. It is. They have a huge community, and every single one of those people are just misled completely. Yes, you can hate me all you want. You can send me notes. I don't care. You are strongly misled if you enjoy anything that Activision puts out, because they are not a well-liked company right now.
Doesn't sound like they'll be changing your mind, or you guys will be changing his mind at all. So
no, Activision, you have failed miserably, and I shan't be playing anything that you make. Sorry.
Oh, okay. But we'll see. We'll see what the future holds for Activision and Blizzard.
Yeah, I really do hope Blizzard breaks apart. I've been a Blizzard fan for years.
Yeah,
they have.
On to a much, much brighter note.
This is a happier section of the podcast.
This is the good section, part of the good section of the podcast.
Well, no. Now the good section comes up later in the podcast, after we talk about some other good stuff. The good part. It's not the last thing we talk about. It's
not the good part, the good part, which is after the other good part.
It's after the other good part that we're going to talk about before the not best part of the podcast. If you guys are completely confused, so am I, because I have no idea where we've now.
That's the point where you have the string on the wall and you connect the dots to the different areas that our logic just went.
Yes.
Okay.
My brain is complete. It's like a scrambled egg with some Cajun seasoning up on side of now.
Sounds pretty good. All right.
I'm kind of
but what we're actually talking about is the recent Nintendo Direct that happened.
Yes.
Yes.
Big yes from me.
Wow. Was it
dude, Nintendo came out firing all the guns, all right?
Yeah, I mean, I got to give it to Nintendo. Out. They've been like, all their announcements have had... Okay, that just happened. All their announcements had surprises in them. Yes, I just dropped something on the floor over here on the ground because I was thinking with my hands and it popped out of my hands and I couldn't catch it. And
he's over here ninja chopping things.
And yes.
We're totally leaving that in the podcast, just so you know.
Yes, we are, because that's fantastic. Where was I?
The fact that you went, wah!
Yes. But yeah, where's my thought? There it is. Okay, Nintendo Direct. Nintendo always comes with this like surprise. Like you had no idea they were coming. And they're huge announcements, like groundbreaking, fan service, fan loving games. And I'm just gonna jump right to it, and we can talk about the others. But Legend of Zelda's Link's Awakening. Yeah. Oh my word!
Yeah, I was very excited to see that.
Just one of the most loved Legend of Zelda games. The first one to hit a mobile platform when it originally released. It was on the Game Boy Color.
Yep.
Game Boy Color. Maybe it actually came out in the Game Boy. Anyway,
now you got me curious. I gotta Google's it.
Yeah, Google's it while I talk about it. But wow, and the changes. So this for one will be their first Legend of Zelda remaster. That'll take place because even though what's the Link Between Worlds took place in the same world as A Link to the Past. It was not a remaster. It was not a retelling of the story. It's a different story. I mean, it was a lot of the same mechanics though. But from the looks of this is a complete graphical remaster while still sticking to the original spirit and mechanics of the game. So there's going to be areas in the game when you expect some of the new mechanics that we have learned in newer Zeldas to happen, like simple ones where you throw up your shield and stuff bounces off and hits the enemy. No, it's not in this one. And we're going to have all the original characters, like, yes, Chomp Chomps are there, Goombas are there.
Goombas are there, yep.
Yeah.
And it came out on Game Boy, not Game Boy Color.
Okay, so it was the Game Boy. I was picturing a black and white plane of Link's Awakening.
Came out in 1993.
16 years ago.
I was 12.
Yeah. I was 3.
God, I'm old.
So we just gave our ages away. But 16 years and we get a complete remastering.
Am I really that much older than you are?
Yes, 10 years.
What in the world?
I told you that a long time ago.
Dude, I will be 38 in October.
And here's we discuss our ages.
Yeah, we're discussing our age. Here's why we're discussing our ages, all right? I see my hairline. It is running away. It's it's like something scared and it's like and it's moving backwards.
Yes.
That's why we're discussing our age, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Cheers.
To that, I'm going to grab my root beer and cheer you. Cheers. Tink. Okay.
Tink.
But yes, 16 years ago, the original, the OG version of the game released. And this one looks gorgeous. Again, you never thought they could do it, but they released another kind of
really pretty
game style. Yeah.
Yeah, really pretty game.
Each one different than last Zelda in how they've redone the kind of graphical. This one has a very kind of cartoony feel to it.
I loved Breath of the Wild.
I did too. No doubt about it.
Yeah, amazing graphical game. This looks even better to me.
It has a slight harken back to what we saw in A Link Between Worlds.
Yes.
But that one felt more of just a graphical bring up of what we saw in Link to the Past, in how they did the monsters and how they did the camera. This one, well, I mean, of course, the 16 years, they had a lot to do, up in their type of, everything's now 3D. From the tiniest butterfly to the little flower to everything, you can tell it's 3D. The camera is slightly altered into its more brought down a little bit. It's not so top down. So that's great. Just everything in it, what we saw. I can't wait to get it for the Switch. I cannot. It'll be another, maybe day one buy, depending on what I'm doing with the stream and what games I'm playing. But
pretty sure it's going to be a day one buy for me.
Yeah. And
here's the cool thing. So my wife loved Zelda Breath of the Wild, and she saw this and she was like, "Oh, I gotta have that." So I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's getting a day one.
Yep. I bought the Switch for my wife so that I could have it. Okay, guys, that's a smart play for all you married fellas out there.
Yep. I got it for myself. For when I go on, just myself. I'm gonna just say that.
Selfish.
I know. Not ashamed, but I got it. They did. So that one happened later on in the Nintendo Direct, and we jumped right to it because it was the big one, and I just couldn't help talking about it.
That was the big one, yes.
Then we got to talk about a really funny one that was released that I'm going to go ahead and call it is going to be the Fortnite killer. It is 100% Fortnite killer right here. Tetris 99.
Tetris 99. For all you people out there that have OCD, that hated that stupid L-shaped block, that you might get in and you've got one little space left over down at the bottom. I hated Tetris. I really did.
Yeah.
I could not stand playing that game. But here's the cool thing. I sat down and watched a YouTube video on Tetris World Champions, and dang, those guys were good at playing that game.
Yeah, like, wow. I didn't know you could do that with Tetris, and wow. Okay, you can.
I didn't know you could mash a Nintendo controller button that fast.
Yeah. And you gotta wonder, those guys gotta immediately be the winners. Like, this is not a oh, how good your accuracy or strategy or anything like this.
Right.
Well, I say that, and the way the mechanics of this game works is the same old Tetris is still there. You take your shapes, you make out the lines, and you complete a line, it deletes itself, etc., and you build up score. But each line you can complete, you can then target one of the other 99 players that are playing at the exact same time and put in an almost full row for them to have to fight against. Well, if a lot of people are targeting you or a lot of people are targeting another person, their blocks are going to fill up really quick, and if they reach the top, whoop, they're KO'd.
You are basically playing 99 other players in a multiplayer first-person shooter with some 2D blocks.
Yes.
That's what you're doing.
Yep.
It's a massive strategy game.
Yep. I mean, it's really what it is. You'll see somebody getting up there. Do you want to target them? Oh, or do you want to play defense real quick and help yourself that way, And if you like Tetris, this will be a fun game, a fun time-killing game for you. Of course, it is multiplayer, so you're going to have internet all the time. Good internet at that, to make sure that you're creating them, getting the right blocks in the right spaces and really fighting against other people. I brought it up just because it's like,
if you
I didn't even know this could exist. If you
haven't seen videos of it, it is actually brain melting watching the videos of people playing this game right now. The amount of things that happen on the screen all at once, it just makes my eyes melt.
Yeah. And if you've been good at Tetris, there's a good chance you'll be up there to the top 10, top 5, or winning, a lot of the matches because you're good at that. I haven't played Tetris in years. It just wasn't my time-killing cup of tea.
I would be at the top of Tetris only if you flipped it upside down.
You flipped it upside down. Nice. So there was that funny announcement. And of course, there was others to mention. There was a Fire Emblem game that was announced. There was a
yeah, I forgot about that one. That did look pretty good.
So I'm not a Fire Emblem person at all. I haven't bought any of the games. Somewhat kept up, checked in on them from time to time, but this one did look really interesting. It was Fire Emblem Three Houses. I
believe that was the name of it. Yeah.
Yep. Three Houses. And first hit listening to the beginning of the story, I was like, oh, okay, this is not a fine game at all. But then later on, you can actually delve into the combat. It's got character development. Sounds like you can actually have some type of dialogue there in decision making. So we'll see if it does any good. The Fire Emblem genre definitely has a following.
It does. It's kind of it's like a cult following for a film.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Not that this games have ever been bad that I know of. I haven't really read any that have just flopped really bad. They've always done good in accordance with their fan base. I've seen some of the previous games. This one that I know of doesn't really do any ground-shattering stuff besides this change in story.
Yeah, so, I think for the fans, it's just it's a piece of the story that they get to have. So
yeah.
Well, I'm like you. I never really kept up with the story. It did look good from what I saw, but I'm like you. I just never really got into playing it.
Yeah. We'll see. This one I think was June or July release date of this year.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, which calls back to what Nintendo does during the releases. It's like, hey, you don't have to wait an entire year for this. We're going to be out in 4 months, 6 months. go get that game. Right. With that said, I don't think we had a release date for Legend of Zelda. I think it just said 2019.
Yeah,
which is still awesome. We're going to get it this year.
It will be this year. Yeah. Well, unless, some craziness happens, which is possible. We're talking Nintendo.
We are talking Nintendo, but I don't know that they've ever delayed a Legend of Zelda game.
I don't think a Legend of Zelda game, but we're still talking Nintendo, okay?
Yeah, right. Yes. Yes.
The other one that looked really cool is Super Mario Maker 2.
Yes.
For those fans out there that enjoyed building and kind of the creativity that the first one brought, I think they're doing a good job with building on this one.
Absolutely. And bringing it to the Switch was, we honestly really saw it coming from what we saw in it just with Super Mario Maker, and people really loved it. There was not a bad thing said about it.
No, I played it. It was an amazing game.
Yeah, you got to build your own Mario world.
It was tons of fun.
Yeah, and the great thing about it was that you could build it in any of the Mario worlds that have existed to this point. You want to go back to original, NES Mario? Cool. Build that world from there. You want to go to a Super Mario Galaxy world? Sort of. You can build it from there. Or I should say, the ones that came...
Super Mario 3D.
Super Mario 3D, Super Mario Bros, the ones that come out on the Wii U's, or the deluxe that came out on the Switch.
Oh yeah,
you get to do it in those worlds. Super Mario World, you want to build a world that you thought needed to exist in there? Go for it. I mean, people were in there making these worlds that were labeled as "quote unquote" the impossible worlds in Super Mario Makers. There was a way to beat them. They weren't 100% impossible. You just had to have some super skill to get through them.
They were darn close to impossible, though.
They were darn close. And we'll see what people can do with the new game. It looked like, from the UI that I remember in Super Mario Maker 1 and what they have in 2, wow, is that a slick UI?
Yeah, it was a really cool looking UI.
To build stuff. I mean, I haven't played the first one. I saw a lot of videos of it, and maybe you can attest to more in the kind of differences that you saw between them.
I will say the first game, the UI was okay. It was clunky to get around in. So the building really took some, like, hey, I really got to focus my brain power right now to remember what the heck does what. So that was one thing. This UI does look a lot cleaner, a lot more simplified, and it doesn't look as clunky. So I hope they've kind of updated that. Mario Maker 1 was a ton of fun, even with the clunky UI and the building system that they did have. So if they improve that and still keep the fun, then Super Mario Maker 2 is going to make them, some pretty happy fans.
Yep, absolutely. And one of the cool things that I saw in the trailer, and I don't know if we'll ever get to experience this, was as the trailer worked its way through the different types of Mario worlds you could build in, from the NES all the way up to the Switch, the theme song changed with it to sound like those eras. So if you really listen, the theme song changed. Like all of a sudden it was in a Super Mario Deluxe theme song with that type of modern sound quality to it, all the way back to it jumped into 8-bit or Super Mario World, and you could tell it as it went through. And it was really cool. And I hope either as you're making it or as maybe you get to choose the song. Maybe that's just as simple as you get to choose the song that's on the world.
I don't know.
Either way, that was really cool.
Would be cool to customize that piece.
Yeah, it would. But I look forward to that one. The Tetris one was funny, of course.
That was funny.
Keep an eye on Fire Emblem. There was a Dragon Quest, I think, was announced as well. That, with that, and then day one purchase of Legend of Zelda. So that's what all happened at Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff coming from Nintendo for sure. Now the good part of the podcast.
I don't know what he's talking about.
The good part of the podcast. You know, what we talked about earlier. It's the good one that came after the good one, but it's not the best one. No.
Something like
This is the best one. It came before the good one and after the good one.
Yes.
What we're talking about is the new Tolkien film that was announced last week. We got to see a trailer for it. And all you crazy fantasy nerds out there know that I absolutely love J.R.R. Tolkien's works. And I'm a huge Hobbit fan, Lord of the Rings fan, big nerd.
Yeah, and I am too. I've read a lot of his. I think I've read some of his side literature, his Lord of the Rings and Hobbit books, because of the time they're written. If you're not used to it, are a hard read in so much of the language that's used and the type of
Agreed.
word forming and sentence structure that is there. It's older English than what we're used to today.
It is Old English style.
It is Old English.
Yeah.
But the content that there is that what this guy came up with.
It's so rich.
Phenomenal.
So rich. Yes. There is so much substance to what he writes. And it's not just the substance of what he wrote. It is the meaning behind what he wrote that was so captivating in the way he grabbed his audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, I could chase so many rabbits on this one. There's so many things I could say right now, but I'm going to stick to the script. I put some things on here that were just great little kind of, hey, did you know this about Tolkien? So most people know Tolkien as J.R.R. Tolkien because that's just what people say. His full name, if you have never heard this, is actually John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. That's a mouthful. So that's why they call him J.R.R. Tolkien.
It's probably how he sounded his name too. Like when he was signing stuff was J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yep. They actually, your name's too long. You need to shorten it to J.R.R., which is really cool. I think it just kind of set the tone for how he wrote his books, and people actually, close friends, they were talked about. They would call him John. People that knew him as a writer always referred to him as J.R.R. They didn't call him John because he didn't sign his name John. He didn't say he was John. He would always say, I'm J.R.R. Tolkien. Mm. I thought that was kind of a cool little fact. So yeah, most people look at the novels that he's written, like Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. Those are the two that most people right off the bat that aren't huge fantasy fans would know. There's a ton of literature that this guy has written. And the funny thing is, he's not the original, first writer of fantasy works, but because of the success that he had and the way he wrote and the fan base that he has, he is considered the father of modern fantasy literature nowadays. And there were people that actually released fantasy novels before he did, but they never got that success that he had.
Yeah, I mean, really, when you redefine something or make it a staple in how you write it, how you brought worlds into being, and people use you as an architect of, kind of how you design stuff for their future books, you earn that label. You really do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And Tolkien was definitely an architect when it came to writing. Some other really cool facts is Tolkien was an English writer. He was also a poet. And if you guys don't know what this is, he was a philologist, which is one who studies the languages through historical facts.
I didn't know that was actually a thing.
It is a thing. He was a philologist. Yes. He was also a university professor. He was a college professor at Oxford, and he was a professor for 20 years, from 1925 to 1940. 5. The dude taught at Oxford, like one of the most prestigious European colleges ever in the world, for 20 years.
That's wow. And that attests to like his brilliance in what he taught in, to stay in that long.
Yeah.
To do something like that. One note that I thought was most interesting about him that I didn't know before, but really connecting the dots makes sense, is of his friendship to C.S. Lewis.
Yeah. Some really cool stories from him and C.S. Lewis. Lots of cool stories. There's so many things that could be talked about right now.
Right, which you can, if you guys didn't know, C.S. Lewis is the creator of the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
Which again, those are easier to read books in my opinion, but just as good in their creation of a world. And some of it, you can almost kind of see a similarity between the two in some of the ideas that are brought up in there.
Yeah.
All together. Not a whole lot, but there's some in there. And that lends to, which now makes sense that I've learned this, is the friendship between the two, because you have those sharings of ideas.
Yep, absolutely. And that was one of the cool parts is, they taught at Oxford together. C.S. Lewis was also I believe a history and literature professor. Another cool little side note for Tolkien, and I don't remember the total number, but while he was at Oxford, if I remember correctly, he wrote 11 of his own languages for his novels. 11 of his own languages.
Yep. Hey, I need a language for this book. Do I need to use some oldie? Yeah.
Elvish, Dwarvish, Orc languages. There was a language called the Black Tongue that he used that was actually not to be spoken. Tolkien actually had a documentary, and he had a fan that actually wrote him a very nice letter, but he wrote it in Black Tongue. And Tolkien refused to read it because he was so detested at what the Black Tongue language meant to him as a professor and as a writer. The reason he made it was because of the novels. And he thanked the fan for writing it, but he refused to read it because of he was detested because of this language that he had created. So some pretty crazy things came out of this. And to think so many years ago, I mean, we're talking, early 1900s, 1920s, just crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope in the documentary, it'll be not just his young life, but where he goes in his adult life, in the creation of all his stories into where he was. It really explores it all. And people have definitely called out his friendship to other major authors, creators of stories.
Oh, absolutely.
One of those being C.S. Lewis. That's been a big call that they hope they see that in there. And there's really good chance there is. Good chance, not guaranteed, but we'll see.
Another really cool fact here is he was a close friend of C.S. Lewis. They were not close friends when they first met. This was something that grew over time, and you actually get to see some of the friendship relationship piece grow in the novels that Tolkien talked about in Lord of the Rings. There's meeting places that him and C.S. Lewis went to on a frequent basis to drink together, to talk together, to study together. And those places became very memorable. One of them being a famous pub that's in Europe, and it's called the Prancing Pony. And if you guys are Lord of the Rings
Oh
fans,
yeah, okay.
then you will know the Prancing Pony. It's actually a real place, and it is one place that C.S. Lewis and Tolkien went on a frequent basis to grab a pint and sit down and chat about life. That's a
Nice.
pretty cool little fact.
I didn't know that.
Both,
That's really cool.
both of the gentlemen were actually members of a literary discussion group, and the literary group that they were part of, they would help upcoming writers. They would help upcoming like creative people in the novel realm. They would talk about theories and new ways of doing things. But that group was known as the Inklings. And if you guys know anything about Tolkien, then some of his novels that he wrote actually have Inklings in them. So pretty cool little side notes there. Tolkien was appointed a commander of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II, which was amazing. I mean, the dude had some amazing feats that he really accomplished in his life. And I hope they bring a lot of that to the film. The film's supposed to be a documentary drama, so it's not going to be a true documentary. It truly is a film, but it's going to be done in more of a dramatic style. I
True
think they're
homage
have,
to the character that they're portraying.
Yeah. Really, I think the film, from what I've seen, is going to explore his younger life. And a lot of people don't know this, but Tolkien was an orphan. So some of the things that happened in his younger life, like when he was getting ready to wed and find his mate, they talked about some of the things that he went through. The basically person that was his guardian for such a long time, I want to say Tolkien was 16, and I cannot remember her name for the life of me, was 19. She was 3 years older than he was. So, he was playing up in the world. And his guardian actually said the reason he failed some of his school tests that was trying to get him into college was because he got married at such a young age. So, 16, 17 years old, and he's looking at getting married already, which is mind-boggling. So, yeah, I really hope that they bring a lot of that in. The movie's supposed to explore his younger orphaned life, his friendships that, I really hope that they bring C.S. Lewis in there as well. His love life that he had with his wife. If you don't know this, Tolkien was a soldier in both World War I and World War II. That's crazy.
Wow. I didn't know he was in both.
He was in both. And really a lot of his novels came from that encroaching war that happened with Hitler. And really the iron tanks and the Foundry Age and all that stuff that happened. World War II, he was actually enlisted as an officer. He was a decoding officer to decrypt secret messages that were coming across for like assassinations and snipers and different things. It's crazy stuff. So really hope they bring a lot of that into his life and how he did things. He was counted as an outcast, and he really kind of just gravitated towards the outcasts of life. So I hope they bring that in. The film is supposed to release on May 10th of this year, and you better believe I'm the first people in line to go see that.
He'll be number one the day before the crazy that sits outside.
Yep, I will be the dude in like the lawn chair. Tolkien film. I'm like, excuse me? You just said it's a Tolkien film? Like that's a bad thing. Yes, it's a Tolkien film. Way better than Star Wars. Way better than all the other things that have come out.
There he goes.
Come on now. It's a Tolkien film.
As I said, May 10th. It does, from the trailers, it does look like a really good documentary drama and how they portray it.
So good.
Depending on your actual review of it, which will probably, no matter what happens to it, will be raving reviews. I will probably go see it.
I will be doing a couple of things. One, we will be doing an in-depth review on the podcast of the movie, and I will also be doing an in-depth write-up on my blog for the movie. As I said, I am a huge Tolkien fan. I always have been, especially around the historical facts of Tolkien. He has, as a dude, just really intrigued me. So, yeah, I'm excited, as you can tell.
Nice. He's excited, guys. He's excited.
I talk fast when I get excited. Now we're moving on to not the best part, because we just talked about the best part, but now we're going to talk about the good part of the podcast that's coming up.
Yes, which was our actual short time hands-on with the Anthem released. We didn't get into the pre-release in some aspect. I'm personally glad I didn't. Just for the fact that we didn't get that date, the players that got in there didn't get day one patch,
right?
Which I don't. This was totally an EA thing that happened. They're just trying to get people in early. Hey, go sign up for our premium membership. You get early access. If the day one patch didn't change as much as I'm hearing it changed, it would not have been a big deal. But it did. It fixed a lot of stuff from what I'm hearing.
A lot.
I can't compare because I didn't play it.
Yeah.
So with that said, first thing that I noticed jumping into the actual game release of Anthem is it looked as good, and I think even better in all aspects than what I saw in the demo.
Well, and here's the cool part. So, see, I'm talking fast again, so I'm excited.
He's excited.
So we've got the PC side of things, which when I originally jumped in, me and Victor on the PC side of the house, and the game was beautiful. Now, I have not picked up the full game on PC. Shame on me. But, life happens.
I'm still trying to work on that, guys. I really am. I'm trying to convince him.
I have tried to convince Victus. He just needs to keep depositing money in my account, and he just won't do it. I don't know why. So, maybe you guys help me out with that. So anyway, figure something out. But what we do have is I have Anthem on the Xbox for the console. And that's only because my other friend, Killer Anakin, bought it, and we share Xboxes, and, matchy happens. So now I've got the game on console. So you guys are actually getting a first impressions review on both the PC and console. The console side of things, let me tell you, when I jumped into the beta on the console, Lord Jesus, it was gross looking. And when I say gross looking, like it was just a really bad looking game. It didn't have good controls. It didn't function well. The graphics were really jacked up. So my comparison on the console side, when I've jumped in a couple of days to it, is dang, they did a good job. They really cleaned the game up, and it plays really, really smooth. It was a good functioning game. There was no glitches that I've seen whatsoever. The intro story was top notch. So yeah, big props to EA and BioWare on the console side of the house. Really anxious to jump into the PC houses.
Yeah, and it sounds like the PC just got the same treatment, especially in some of the changes we saw in implements of graphic changes, graphic settings you could change, and also just general bug fixes. So there's definitely a lot of the bug fixes you saw in the demo were not there in the actual release. There were some new ones, like different reasons for whatever server disconnects were happening. Those have basically gone away for the most part. Some people reported that immediately after download they were having some problems. Not so much now from what I'm hearing. But there was two big changes implemented that people requested, whether they listened or they were actually still planning on entering it. It it's there is, for one, motion blur is actually able to be turned off, and two,
which is amazing.
And there's a great argument of why we even have motion. I understand it's supposed to have a cinematic effect, but I don't know anybody that plays with motion blur. If you're listening and you do,
why?
Yes.
Answer why.
Just why. I want to understand. Because personally, I turn it off. I have a much better experience. I have a really enjoyable game. It doesn't make me feel sick if I'm really in a fast-paced game and everything's just blurring really hard. But besides that motion blur setting actually being able to turn off, they added camera shake, turn off and on.
Yeah.
And I got used to the camera shake in the demo. I did. It kind of felt like a new...
Yeah, it was kind of a cool new feature.
Yeah, new feature of the game. Kind of that was part of Anthem's DNA. But when you get to turn that off, it's like you're playing an entirely different game. It just feels more fluid, much smoother of a game of how you're interacting with it, and able to make changes, and able to keep your gun on spot or make the correct move for this particular area. So those two right there, personally, I've turned those off, and wow. Yes.
See, I haven't had that experience yet, because the console, from what I've seen in the settings, there's not a lot of customization really from a setting standpoint. I mean, it drops on console, and what you get's what you get. So
that's unfortunate.
It is. Like I said, really short time in Anthem so far. I've only got a couple of hours under my belt. One, I just have been super busy and just haven't had a lot of time to play games lately. So the first impressions that you're getting is really just around the console prep that EA and BioWare did, from the beta with the servers, the graphical layout, the jerkiness of the movements, and some of the lag that we were really seeing on the console. Those were some of the big issues that we had, to a really well-polished game that they've put out so far. The only thing that I've experienced, and this was earlier today actually, is trying to matchmake with a rando group, and it kept saying that the servers were down. That's the only thing that I've experienced so far.
Really?
That was kind of a fail.
But that is good to hear about the console specifically. I was worried because of how far they've gone in some of the graphical enhancements and just the engine that they're using for Anthem. I was worried about those non-elite, non-pro consoles being able to consistently run a good, solid frame rate in the games. Now, no matter what, when you get those intense battles and there's a lot of ultimates you're going off at one time, I'm going to expect some frame drops. Probably some pretty significant frame drops, depending on what you're playing on. But
I'm
besides
playing
those
the Storm.
So, oh wow, flashy, a lot of stuff going on. But besides those points, I expect you to have just as smooth flying, just as smooth mob engagement.
The flying is really smooth on console.
Is it? And that's what I've heard, even with the demo, is that it really was kind of felt like a game that that out of the box, you didn't have to change any settings. It just felt like, oh, it's going to play better with controller. Now, if you go in and you change some settings regarding flying, like I would suggest taking your swimming and flying and just turn their sensitivity way down to like 20%.
Right.
The keyboard and mouse feels really good personally at that point. So if you're listening and you're like, man, I just can't get the flying down, I can't get the swimming down, it just feels like I'm all over the place.
Yeah, turn the sensitivity down.
Yeah, it really doesn't help that people are not used to the type of mouse acceleration that they have regarding flying and swimming, which you notice the two little cursors, they'll differ from each other depending on how fast you move that mouse. That's what it is, just mouse acceleration. It's weird being that if you're not used to it, and understanding that and lowering that sensitivity will help you. So
one other real big call out on the console side of things, like I said, the flying is smooth. The gun handling is smooth. The around the world movement, the UI looks good. The graphics look really smooth. I haven't seen a lot of frame rates. I haven't seen a lot of issues. There's two big things that really stood out to me. Is one, some of the skills in the game are attached to what feels a weird button combination right now. So like your super, or your ultimate, I should say, is tied to your directional pad. And to me, that just
weird.
It feels really awkward. And I don't ever think of the directional pad when I'm playing on an Xbox controller, because you don't use it for anything almost nowadays in any game. So as you're running and as you're gunning your bumpers, you're using your left and right triggers. And I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but to me, I forget about it. And it, I think, gets a little bit lost in the translation of which one to use. And then for switching weapons, it's a little awkward too, because it's let's hold the X button for a few seconds and then it switches weapons.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like a weapon switch should be tied to your D-pad, and your super should be a button combo of like left, right trigger, left, right bumper, and mash them together. And I don't see anything in any of the settings that you can customize that.
Oh, so there was no key binding that you could change?
I don't think there is. Like I said, I'll have to go back in and check some of the settings and see if there's any more customization. But really, so far, the console side, it feels pretty top notch, and I think good job so far.
That's good. And I think in both games, just the gunplay and the gun feel feels just the same solid that we had in the demo. Even better, because a lot of the bugs worked out, a lot of the audio bugs, you could really experience the guns themselves. That's where the audio bugs really affected the games, when you couldn't hear your own gunfire. With that said, though, and you can really see this in between, and just getting your different weapons, is the uniqueness in the different types of weapons out there. And there, even when you get like a burst weapon, there's only a small selection of those individual burst weapons. There may be, once you get into your like rarity levels, there's different perks on them, which is good, but the same type of weapon and how it feels really functions the same. And I hope, and they sounds like they will, so I hope they bring in more of that. So that's just a note there. I would say another call out that immediately happened, we saw this in the demo, but it is a huge help to those that are wanting to run multi-javelin, like level up all your javelins at once, is that you'll have random chances to get gear for your other javelins as you're leveling up your main one.
Yeah, and I like that feature. That's a huge perk, so you don't have to grind out 3 or 4 different ones if you want 4.
Right. For us, called back to Destiny, where we had to individually grind out 3 different characters, 3 different storylines, 3 different main, and that's not the case with this one. You're one dude, and you have access to all 4 javelins once you get them unlocked. And you can just switch whenever you want. So that's really good for their continuing to taking away of the boring parts of a grind, and just allowing you to do the fun parts, which I want to find that masterwork. I'm really missing that masterwork weapon, or that masterwork helm, or legendary, or wherever step you're at. So
I will say one more thing. The only other, I would say, little hiccup on the console side, and this was a personal dig for me because of my aggravations that I saw on the PC side with Fort Tarsus and the social space. The social space seems really limited in Anthem right now. It's very underwhelming because there's only a couple of things that you can do inside the social space. There's a couple of little tidbits of information and some lore that you can pick up. And I hope that they unlock some more of it as you progress in the mission. I hope it's one of those story types
that's what I've heard does happen.
And if they do that, then awesome.
Yeah. That was my worry as well. Up until I read that of some somebody's note is that Fort Tarsus, the one you see now, will not be the Fort Tarsus that you end up with when you finish that final mission. It'll change as you develop your storyline.
And see, if they do that, then that's amazing. The only other little tidbit along with Fort Tarsus is I really don't like movement as you walk through the city. They did add a run feature in the city.
Yep.
And it is one of the lamest looking things ever. And I don't know. It just, there's some type of perspective issue in the way your shadow is cast and the way you move inside the city. Something feels off. And when you engage the run button, you move a little bit faster, but not a lot. So it's like you got these little T-Rex legs, man. They just don't move fast. You hear these little pitter-patter steps. I'm like, is this a leprechaun running around? I mean, what is this? You have
to make sure you slow down and enjoy the scenery for the 1,000th time that you're running through Fort Tarsus.
I mean, there's only 3 places you can go in Fort Tarsus right now. You either jump in the javelin or you stop by the market. That's it.
Yep. And I bet they'll refine that. It's one of those.
I hope they do.
One of those nuances that, if by itself would not be that big a deal, it is only because of some of the critiquing that people have brought to the surface of Anthem. And we may get to the same part, but of some of the reviews that I'm reading, it kind of is the building point of some people saying don't get this game, or it's not where it needs to be, or it's just I'm not enjoying it, etc. So
well, and another cool thing, this isn't part of the script, but we had chatted about this over Twitter earlier today, is the roadmap that EA put out for Anthem looks really stout over the next couple of months, 3 months actually. And I'm excited about some of the stuff they're doing. Quality of life changes, new content, some story stuff coming out. I'm really excited for some of the things that they're pushing to Anthem.
Yeah, and I have to agree with some people. It is such an aggressive 3 months that there's going to be a lot of us surprised if they can actually pull all of it off.
Yeah, for sure.
This is all free. This is all free DLC that they're talking about. New story, new everything.
Yeah, this isn't the packs. Like, you don't have to go pay the $15 for the next couple of months and have it downloaded. This is all just getting pushed, and you'll have an update to your console or PC, and lo and behold, there's some new content for you.
Yep. So that'll be exciting for each piece that they add. They've already confirmed a lot of aspects. Like they're for sure looking at new javelins to be added, which is exciting. For that, especially those that maybe don't have our niche yet.
Maybe they'll replace the interceptor with something good.
Oh boy, here we go.
That's a dig for you, Skullsy.
We'll see what javelin they bring in. I don't think they'll be taking anybody out. Everybody loves the current ones that are in there because they currently match every single type of playstyle there is.
Yeah, they will. I'm kind of anxious to jump into the Colossus again as well.
Yeah, I've heard he's gotten really good. There's some updates that changed it, especially because you can now revive people while having your shield out,
which is awesome.
Whoa, why wasn't that thing before? Why? I have a big. I got to put it up. I'm sorry, I got to put it up. Let me revive you. Okay, now I can bring it out. Okay.
There's some changes that they made with the Storm as well. He can actually take more than having a spoon throw at him now. It's kind of nice. Yeah. He doesn't just fall over when a flower pollen decides to hit his suit, and he's like, "Oh, I'm dead." he is actually able to take a few hits now.
Yep. And these are just some of the good updates they've rolled out, and just from day one patch, and they've also, I think, a couple, maybe a little bit of download updates I've seen hit Origin last couple days, day or so. I've seen have to download something, so they're keeping on it. Good on you, BioWare, and help from EA for doing that. They're definitely keeping in constant communication of changes and saying here's stuff coming. Whether you have made the decision or taken away your download of Anthem now, I say keep in mind of all the stuff that's on this way. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to jumping back into Anthem when I can, which I will be picking it back up once I finish my Kingdom Hearts playthrough on stream. Hopefully that's Tuesday or Wednesday. And then after that, it is Anthem all the time.
Yeah, I've got one thing ahead of Anthem. I'm finishing up the last thing that I had in my backlog that I wanted to finish in my games, and that was Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I am about 85% done. So once it is completed, really Anthem is going to be my go-to for quite a while, I think.
Yeah. It'll be a fun time and can't wait.
Absolutely. Ready to jump in for sure. And Anthem's fun.
It is. I personally am enjoying it very much. I enjoyed the demo. There was bugs. I knew they would be fixed, but outside of those, I enjoyed it then. I still enjoy it now. That is my first impression of the game. We'll see how the story keeps me, and the end game grind hits.
In-game grind. Not grind as in like, grind, but in-game grind.
Yes, in-game grind.
Yeah. Well, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed some of the shenanigans from this podcast. We've had quite a good run over the last few weeks. You guys have been amazing supporters. Thank you so much for all the likes and the support. We really appreciate everything that you guys are doing. The podcast is growing. We're seeing tons of likes, and we've seen reviews, and we've had questions sent in. So thank you guys. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in, listening to us. We're just geeks, and we like to talk about stuff. We hope that you enjoy what we talk about, and definitely appreciate all the support from those that do, and giving us feedback and just listening to us and all that. But if you're listening and you did enjoy this episode, you can be sure to subscribe to our show and drop us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast apps. You can also connect to us over on Twitter, Instagram, or our website at allthingsgeekery.com, and those links will be in the notes below.
Absolutely. Guys, if you do drop a review, it really does help us grow. iTunes, Spotify, any of your favorite podcast apps, like Victus said. But that truly does help the podcast grow. Share it, like it, love it, gotta have it, whatever those sizes are. And if you guys have any specific topics, maybe new games, maybe something that you want us to talk about, then let us know. Drop us a note over at podcastatg@gmail.com, and we will potentially feature that topic and whoever the submitter is in one of our future episodes. And that wraps up this episode, which has been a ton of fun to hang out with you guys. Thank you so much. And as always, you guys stay awesome. We will see you in the next episode.